So if you didn't get a chance to see, Nick was actually on Jimmy Dore's show this week, and they were talking about the midterm elections. And we're going to cover a little bit of this conversation here because there were some things here that were said that I 100% agree with. And we need to start asking ourselves, who really won Tuesday night? Let's get into that.
So I want to talk about this because there's the big election last night, and people were saying that it's saved democracy. I just want to remind people that the U.S. is an oligarchy. It is not a democracy. So if you think you voted last night for corporate Democrats who just gave $85 billion to Nazis in Ukraine, and you call that saving democracy, I have to disabuse you of that stupid idea because you don't live in a democracy. Your democracy was stolen from you decades ago.
Jimmy, you know when I really figured it out was when Aaron Mate was here and we watched a clip of the debate between Fetterman and Dr. Oz, and they asked them about minimum wage.
And they both don't want it.
I think John Fetterman said goodnight, and I think Dr. Oz said we're going to start fracking, and somehow that... And I was like, if he was a real doctor, he should have dropped everything to help John Fetterman.
Right then.
Yeah, that's probably laws. People are like, you're not a doctor.
If you were a doctor, you'd be helping that stroke victim instead of running against him and
frack that lump on the back of his neck and see it.
Trying to confuse him in public.
Yeah.
So if you voted yesterday, this was your choice. You got to vote for the oligarchy or the oligarchy.
Let's pause here. This is correct. Because, and maybe that's the way we should phrase it to people going forward. Instead of saying, are you going to vote Democrat or Republican? Maybe we should just start telling people, are you going to vote for the oligarchy or the oligarchy? And see how that resonates with people so people really understand what they're actually voting for. Because both are corporate. Both are owned by Wall Street. Maybe we should change our framing.
That's why it was a tough election.
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd do Michael Moore a favor and vote for the oligarchy.
That's right. As a personal favor to Michael Moore. So you got guys like this. This guy, of course, he's in bed with the establishment oligarchy, and he says fascism took a big step backwards last night. Thank you, America. Again.
Oh, really? Does it make up for Elon buying Twitter even?
Again, if fascism is what Mussolini said it was, which is the convergence of the state and corporations to work against the citizen, which is what it is, both parties are 100% fascist. We live in a fascist oligarchy. You don't. So, and here's both.
Also, to Jink's point, when he said fascism took a big step back last night, how did it take a big step back if the Democrats are losing the House? People were literally out there. If you guys watch Twitter, people are like literally out there cheering rah rah Democrats because there wasn't a red wave and they're losing the House. That's how desperate people are. Isn't that sad? That's embarrassing. The Democratic Party should have wiped the floor. They should have wiped the floor with the Republican Party. They couldn't even do it. They couldn't do it. They're sitting back saying, I sincerely hope we don't have a red wave. Yay! AOC included on Twitter. See, there was no red wave. Boo, you just lost the House. You do realize none of your shit's getting through, right? You realize your legislation is not getting through. What are you cheering for? Ay.
Party side with the corporation over voters and workers. Wall Street won another election. The only difference between Democrats and Republicans is the speed at which their knee hits the floor when a donor enters the room, as Ralph Nader said. And so I had to remind me. Now here is Michael Moore. Michael Moore.
God.
Can we critiqued him yesterday? He was just flat out lying to people to get them to vote. And people who were non-voters, his message to non-voters was, please vote as a personal favor to me. He didn't have anything that he could entice them with as policy or, hey, if you vote, this good thing will happen for you. It was just do it as a favor to me because there is no reason to vote.
How surprised are you that they did it? I didn't think he had that many people who do a favor for him.
He says, yesterday we created a blue wall that stopped a red wave. Few were willing to predict that millions of you made it happen, and our democracy lives to see another day. Thank you. So what I said was, you created a blue wall of corporate oppression disguised as one big democracy virtue signal as you stand for 100% corporate-controlled pro-war anti-worker party that is sending $80 billion to Ukraine while denying us healthcare and a living wage. Hooray!
Yeah, but Republicans are worse, sir.
Worse. So let me bring in Nick Cruse. Nick, what do you have to say about yesterday's results?
And still undefeated in these elections, Goldman Sachs.
Still undefeated.
And still undefeated in this election. Israel is 100% undefeated. There are progressives, quote unquote, that are celebrating the win of John Fetterman. There wasn't a blue wall. There was a Zionist wall.
Let's comment on what Nick just said there. Undefeated Goldman Sachs. Undefeated the state of Israel. Because Goldman Sachs, in the end, they still win. The state of Israel, and I mean the state, not the people, Zionism still wins. So what exactly was one? Do you see what I'm saying? This is why the other night, when I talked about this, I said the real winners, besides Wall Street, the military industrial complex, besides them, in reference to the people that actually won, the real winners were the ballot initiatives that passed in people's favor. And that happened in the States. Those were the real winners. And I got something to say about that later on tonight in a second. But those were the real winners for the people. You didn't win anything by voting for a Democrat politician or Republican politician. You didn't win anything. Do you get that? If you're working class, if you're poor, you won nothing. If you're not in one of those states that had those ballot measures that passed in favor of the people, you didn't win anything. I want to be very clear about that. Let's go back in.
The progressive movement cannot win without selling out to Zionism in the military industrial complex. So they are 100% the winners. And despite what the narrative that come from the Republican Party, I want you guys to know Rand Paul is the only Republican senator that voted against Ukraine aid.
I know.
So another win for Zelensky. So thus far, working class, they took another loss. Zelensky is smiling, Israel's smiling, Goldman Sachs is smiling. So isn't this a grand democracy?
Yeah.
You hear that? Once again, the working class still lost. And I can say this time and time again, and people believe that their lives are actually going to improve by voting D or R. And then you still look around and you realize you're still struggling. You know, you're still working paycheck to paycheck, right? And if you lose a paycheck, you're screwed. You look around and you see you still can maybe barely afford gas. You go to the grocery store and you see the prices are still expensive, so you're still trying to ration your groceries. So if you're working class or you're poor, what have these parties done since my lifetime? And I mean my lifetime, okay? I'm not talking about the shit that they passed before my black ass was born. I'm not talking about Social Security. I'm not talking about the New Deal. I'm talking about since I was born. What have these parties actually done for working class and poor people that has improved your life? Maybe a couple social issues, but those were passed at the Supreme Court. So if people say, well, gay marriage passed, that was the Supreme Court. What have they done?
Oh, well, it's quite a democracy. As Ryan Knight reminds us, he says big business and the billionaire class win yet another election in the United States and retain full control of the House, Senate, and both corrupt parties who do their bidding. That's very well said. He said, just a reminder that the U.S. elections are not about preserving democracy. They're about preserving the illusion of democracy and keeping the people trapped in a corrupt political system that puts corporations over people.
That's right. And Ryan, by the way, if you don't follow Ryan Knight on Twitter, definitely follow him. He's spot on. And this is true, because if we actually had a true democracy, would third party candidates have to fight to get on the ballot? Would independent candidates have to fight to get on the ballot? Would Matthew Ho have to try to win a lawsuit because the Democratic Party decides, yeah, we decide we don't want you on the ballot? Would you have to go through all that? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
That's what election day is in America. It's nothing to be celebrated. There should be no celebration today whatsoever. No matter what happens on Tuesday, over 500,000 Americans will not have a place to live. Millions won't have access to adequate health care, and over 37 million Americans will still be living in poverty.
I saw this tweet when it posted on Twitter. This one was spot on. That's why I say, like, if you're working class or poor, you didn't really win anything. The poverty issue is still a problem. The homeless issue is still a problem. People are still living paycheck to paycheck. We don't even have a $15 minimum wage federally in this country. Now, some of the states have it, but federally, $7.25 an hour. But you're supposed to go stand in line, take off from work, and vote for these same clowns who go in and do nothing for you?
People like to, so now it's very popular now to say that homeless people the problem is just drug addicts and stupid lefties with their policies that allow drug addicts to camp on. And if they would just get rid of these stupid lefty policies, homeless people would vanish.
That's, by the way, that's just the part that you see a lot,
yes,
which is huge.
That's right.
But the other huge part that you don't know about, they have jobs. That's right. 40% of homeless people have jobs. Okay, just so you know. And what I think one in 20% of
and that includes, those people are usually ones that were evicted. So they already had a job before they were homeless. And they fell on hard times, whatever it may be, just an unexpected expense. It can happen to any one of us. It just so happens that some of us have more money to handle those unexpected circumstances. And you'll see them. You'll see them here in Boston. You'll see them in LA. You'll see them in people who had something happen financially and they couldn't pay their rent and they didn't have family that they could go stay with, or some may still have family. But what you have to understand this, and I have to put this in here, what you have to understand is that some people do not have a family support system. So they may have family members, but that doesn't mean the family members are supportive of them. So just because so-and-so's mom and dad have a house down in Florida, so-and-so's mom and dad may not let them come stay at that house. You see what I'm saying? Like, some people have that type of relationship with their family where the family members look at it as though you're down and out, it's your fault. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, may have that type of mentality. And I know this because I've seen this in person. I've known people who have been in that type of situation where they fell down on their luck, had a financial situation, and they had family members that had homes and cars, but the family members would not let them come back. Not everybody has that. And I think that's important for people to understand. Not everyone's parents are alive. That's another thing. Not everybody has a family member that has a place for them to stay. They may have an apartment, but they may have no room to keep them there. So it really upsets me when people criminalize homeless people or when people try to demonize them, because you don't always know. You may think you know, you don't always know what happened to them that put them in that situation to begin with. I want to get to the part here again where Nick comes in. There we go.
I know they say 1 out of 5 kids live in poverty, but I cannot stress enough that the poverty rates in this country is a joke. So according to this country, if you're a single mom with 2 kids and you make $23,000 a year, you're technically out of poverty.
Yeah.
And that's a joke. And 1 out of 5 kids live in poverty despite the culture of low expectations set by capitalists. So imagine what the child poverty rate would be if they actually use real common sense numbers. No one, no matter where they are in this country, can live as a single mom with 2 kids on $23,000 a year. If you have 4 kids, $32,000 a year. These are ridiculous numbers, and the child poverty.
And I just want to add in here really quick, and I'll let Nick finish. It's hard to live as a single person with no kids making $23,000 a year. As I can tell you, you're trying to live off of that in Massachusetts, you're going to be strong. Even in South Carolina, like, it's hard. That's your money will be tight. Okay. Your money will be very tight. So the poverty rate that they're discussing here, like, it's actually ridiculous. You expect someone who has 2 kids to be able to live off of that?
Poverty rate is still high.
Correct.
Now, do you think all these mandates and lockdowns and stuff to fight fascism maybe count as like a homeopathic remedy?
So, I mean, I can't get over how the Democrats are on social media today claiming victory. It's mind-blowing to me that that's just, you guys did it with, just the left fist of the corporate fucking bully won yesterday. That's what happened. Control of the U.S. Senate may again be decided in Georgia as the race between Democratic incumbent Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker heads to a December. That's how corrupt the Democrats are. They can't even beat Herschel Walker. That's how corrupt. That's how corrupt Hillary Clinton was. She couldn't even beat a game show host. This is how corrupt the Democrats are, and they have to try to lie to you and trick you into thinking that somehow because they're not going to stand up for you economically, but they're not going to stand up for your freedom of speech or your liberty or your Fourth Amendment or your First Amendment, but they will protect democracy in some vague, nebulous way that they can never tell me how they're going to do it.
And this was the point that I was trying to make as well, is that this race should have never even gone to a runoff. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, he should have tried to find the best way to win that outright. Because now, like someone mentioned, and I think it was Wary mentioned it earlier, with them blocking the student loan cancellation, will that affect the turnout for Warnock in December when they have the runoff? I mean, you should have tried your best to win that outright. But the fact that they had to struggle with that just is terrible. Let's bring Nick in here as well.
The parliamentarian that I never heard of.
They'll find another parliamentarian.
To not give you what they're supposed to.
They'll blame it on Joe Rogan.
Oh, the Council of Owls met and said we can't give Medicare.
Don't forget Susan Sarandon. They'll blame her too.
Yeah, and Jimmy and my brother Rome, he's playing on RBN. He said the best outcome for the working class, and not the reason why you would think, is for the Democrats to win, so people can see the Democrats in full control and see the Democrats not do anything for them. What are your thoughts on that, Jimmy?
I 100% agree with that. I was like, I hope that the Democrats win again, so they can't have a scapegoat to blame our lost democracy on. And when people go to vote in 2 years, they'll remember the Democrats have been in complete control of government for 4 years, and my life got worse.
So that's a good point, and that's something I really didn't think about. But maybe it is a good thing for people to see that. So then people can realize, you know what? Economically, I'm doing worse now than I was under GOP. So I see it wasn't just having a Republican president. We have a Democrat president. And the same things economically are still happening. So maybe people do need to see that.
That's why people voted for Donald Trump, not because they were all of a sudden half the country turned into racists, not because half the country turned into Nazis or white supremacists, but because they voted for Barack Obama twice and their lives got worse. That's why the black and brown people in Wisconsin and Milwaukee wouldn't show up to vote for Hillary Clinton, and they let a guy like Donald Trump win because they voted for Barack Obama, and their lives got worse. So that I agree with you. I think it actually would be better off for the country if the Democrats remained in control of government so people could see that there is no difference in the parties except around the edges. Now, there was a difference in the parties around the edges, certainly when it came to COVID. DeSantis actually approached COVID in a sane way where he did follow the science as opposed to the Democrats who pretended to follow the science. What they were following was anything Big Pharma told them. And that's exactly what the Democratic Party did. Now, they're both beholden to Big Pharma, but they're, again, just around the edges and around free speech. Now, somehow free speech has become a right-wing cause where it used to be like people say free. So now they've equated free speech with hate speech. So if you're for free speech, they then say you're for hate speech, which is not, again, that's a sleight of hand. And that's not true because that's all they have to run on. They have to run on, well, we're going to talk about it in another thing about how the Democrats, they didn't run on the economy. They didn't run on a minimum wage. They didn't run on health care. What they ran on was abortion. Because
they couldn't. So this is the thing. They couldn't run on it. They really couldn't. They couldn't run on the minimum wage thing because it was 7 Democrats that voted against the $15 minimum wage in the Senate. So they couldn't brag on that. Now, if it would have passed, they would have been like, they could have said, hey, look what we did. We increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour federally. They couldn't say that. They could try to brag about the child tax credit, but could they? Because they cut it short, right? They couldn't brag about those stimulus checks, the $2,000 stimulus checks, because they didn't give us $2,000, right? This thing is flying around and it is annoying me. Go away. Anyway, they couldn't brag about that. That was the thing. Economically, they didn't really have anything that they could brag about. So then what they do, we got to go pivot towards the social issues. We got to tell people that their lives are at stake here, right? So I think, had it not been, like, we got to think about this for a second. If the Supreme Court did not overturn Roe v. Wade, would we have seen that red wave? Let's think about it, guys. Let's pretend none of this happened. Let's pretend this press about the student loan cancellation being blocked. Let's pretend that happened before the midterm election instead of after. Let's pretend the Supreme Court did not overturn Roe v. Wade. Would we have seen a red wave then? Probably so. The overturn of Roe v. Wade, like, honestly, that was probably the best thing they had in their pocket for the Democratic Party. Was that, even though people said economic issues was number one, that was probably the best thing they had in their pocket, and canceling the student loan debt. But if the press about the student loan cancellation being blocked came out before the midterms, I don't think the turnout would have been the same. Hit that like button, guys. That helps me with the algorithm.
That's the only thing they had left to run on. And saving democracy. Go ahead.
Yeah, you brought up Ron DeSantis. Me and my co-host CJ on Revolutionary Blackout, we did a stream covering how neoliberalism enables fascism.
Yes.
So you had Ron DeSantis that pretty much have a stronghold in Florida. You got the right that's begging him to run in 2024. And I personally think he'll do better than Trump at this point because the Democratic Party and liberals created a powerhouse out of Ron DeSantis because of the void they left because they were so horrific on the COVID policies. If they didn't leave that opening for Ron DeSantis, he doesn't exist. And that just another example of how neoliberalism for the Democratic Party enables the far right.
And he's right. And this is what I'm telling people, that, like, people are worried about Donald Trump, and some of them are sleeping on Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is popular, especially considering how he handled Florida, and even friends of mine that live there that are not Republican and are not what you call a fan of Ron DeSantis. Even they said the way he handled the pandemic said a lot. And so that's the person I feel more people need to be paying closer attention to. If he ran in 2024 or 2028, he could win. And if people thought that Trump's policies were crazy, what do you think Ron DeSantis is going to do?
100%. Somebody just made this point that that it's the Democrats neoliberal. Oh, it was the Hulk. What's his name? Mark Ruffalo.
Oh.
He tweeted that out. The Democrats are enabling fascism. So he did a video about it, and he got in big trouble. So he had to run around and do campaign stops for Democrats, saying that they were protecting democracy because he got caught telling the truth about the Democratic Party, and he wants to remain in his perch high above liberal Hollywood.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo, if you follow him on Twitter, he pulls things back sometimes. Like, he criticized the Democratic Party, and of course the liberals came after him, and so he had to pull it back. He had to walk it back. See how that works?
That's exactly why Mark Ruffalo. So here's Jen Psaki, former press secretary, now getting her corporate.
So Jen Psaki says no races have been called yet, and they won't be for a while. But just some facts for your back pocket. Bill Clinton lost 54 House seats in 1994, and Barack Obama lost 63 in 2010, and both went on to win re-election. Yeah, the country was at a different place economically back then, too. That's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, in 1994, we did not have social media. And let's be clear, social media does have an effect. We did not have social media. 2010, some people still weren't even on Facebook yet. You know, more people are able to see through the Democrats' BS now. So I'm gonna get to this part here, because I think there was one more part where, or maybe not. I thought there was one more part where, oh, Nick came in right here.
Fetterman is the opposite of, he never had a job in his fucking life.
Really?
He's not a worker.
Oh, the stroke.
His hands are softer than a baby's ass. Are you shitting me?
I don't know
Fetterman.
I just know he looks like the Thing. From
That guy's a
Fantastic
fake.
Four.
He's 100,000% fake.
I'm trying to see where he went to college, but I think he went to elite academia as well.
I think
Very wealthy. Yeah, Harvard Kennedy School,
did he go
Harvard
to
University.
Did he go to Wharton? Where'd he go?
I see Harvard University.
There you go.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
this guy is not a worker.
the
Not a
only
worker.
job he ever had was as a politician. He never fucking did anything.
Oh my God, he looks like he had.
Eric called him Fakerman. Yeah, that's another thing. And then they're talking about Fetterman. So I think Nick, he did a good job. He's been on there before. Nick was just doing the damn thing. So well said. That message needs to get out there, and people need to hear more of it from more people. He went to the Kennedy School, of course. A lot of them went to the Kennedy School at Harvard. A lot of them come out of there. Let's be real. Okay. Israel Moore. Sabs, the tribalism is so annoying. People are dying, and that's why celebrity, beauty, pageant culture, and politics is disgusting. I agree. Thank you for the super chat, Colin. The squad is happy because it's easy for them to virtue signal to the poors now. Yep. That's right. 2008 BS. Sabby, also remember the Dems seem to have a blackout on discussing all that crazy stuff going on with Mississippi, its water and the welfare funds. Yeah, that too. They've been really silent about that. Thank you for the super chat, Miss. The student loan forgiveness was a scam to get young people to vote for them. That's right. Now, I don't know if that's going to be resolved or not, but if it's not, like I said, I don't know. If they don't fix it, I told you guys hit the streets before, but like if they don't fix that, like, oh dear.